Welcome to the Pigskin Party Podcast, the only podcast that combines real NFL analysis with a splash of pop culture and a dash of the random. Let's get this Pigskin Party started with your hosts, Brian McFadden, Will Southard, and Tommy Yu.
Welcome, everybody, to the PPP presented by Legit Football. My name is Brian. Please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you're listening or watching. And, of course, tell those friends so we can grow this Pigskin Party. I'm joined by one of my co-hosts. Ever since we brought on Tommy, he has not missed a show. He's been our Iron Man. He's been our reliable quarterback coming off the bench. But you know what? He wanted to be on a trip in Hawaii, in Maui, and I can't fault him for that. He's been a pro. So, Will, it's like old times, man. It's just me and you. That's how the show started.
Listen, I'm not your second choice, B-Mac. Big Mac. It's a week. We got some mediocre fourth-stringer football under our belt, and it'll be a good time, man. I'm here. I'm excited. I'm excited to overreact.
Well, I mean, the week one of the preseason, the shine is still on because so many of us have been deprived of football for 6-7 months at this point. So we're all just eager for any Jacob Eason news we can get with the Colts or whoever the third stringer du jour is. But I'm sure by next week we'll all just be ready for the regular season one. Are you feeling it yet? Are you hyped, Will? Where's your mindset at right now?
I mean, I'm glad that there's something back. It's not anything, right? We'll talk about that, but it's a week. There's a lot of world events going on right now. It's a great time in the world. Everybody's happy. There's no overthrowing of governments or anything going on, so it's a good time to
pointless wars coming to an end overnight. Nothing like that. It's just who cares? It's preseason football.
Listen,
right?
Between the war in Afghanistan and how Trevor Lawrence did in the first week of preseason, I'd rather talk about Trevor Lawrence.
Well, without further ado, let's go ahead and bring in our guest. We have a very special guest today. We have Tracy Sandler, who is the founder and CEO of the Fangirl Sports Network and a 49ers beat reporter. Tracy, how you feeling? Welcome to the PPP.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I am doing well. How are you guys doing?
Fantastic. As we said, the shine is still on. Week one preseason before we all just get bored of this, the backups playing and ready for some real football. But I'd love to hear more about Fangirl Sports Network. Founder and CEO, I mean, that sounds awesome. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Thank you very much. It was something I started several years ago, just covering the 49ers in the beginning. And the whole idea behind it is I wanted to create a place for female fans with content that spoke to female fans a little bit more, and also whether you're a casual fan or a super passionate fan like myself, you were really kind of comfortable being whatever kind of fan you could be. So we started with that kind of premise, and now we say all of our content inspires, informs, and makes you laugh. And our tagline is that a fangirl is a woman who knows all of Tom Brady's stats but isn't afraid to embrace her inner Giselle. So that is kind of our whole thing. So we have merchandise now. We have various pieces of content that are original to us. We share a lot of news, and that's kind of where we are. So we do every week. We have Community Monday, 5 fun facts. We have a podcast called Get My Job, where every week I sit down with prominent women in the sports industry and women in various positions in the sports industry and talk about her journey and any obstacles she's faced, advice she has for women, coming into sports. We do a piece called the Friday Five, and then, various other pieces of content throughout the week. And then on top of that, I cover the 49ers. So it's a busy time, but I love it.
I don't know how much you know about our show, Tracy, but we've had on probably nothing. We've had on a fair number of prominent women fantasy and football analysts.
Oh, amazing.
I can confidently say that every single one of them knows more about football than I do.
And it's 100%. So funny. That's very funny because and you guys obviously aren't like this, but there's memes about this and the joke of that a woman will say, I could say, oh yeah, I cover the 49ers and I grew up a 49ers fan, and the response is often, oh really? Well, can you name the 1984 starting offensive line? No, I cannot. But I mean, come on, who can?
Can you? No, they can't either. Yeah.
Except for the people that played on that 1984 offensive line. But I think that's probably true. My brothers and my dad would say I have long and far surpassed any level of sports knowledge that they had.
It's interesting that you mentioned that. Our very first, and Will's right, we've actually had a number of NFL women on here. We're big fans of bringing on, supporting as much as we can. Our very first guest, female guest, was Samantha Button from NBC Sports, and she said the exact same thing. When I think it was Will, we asked her, well, what's the hardest thing about being a woman covering the NFL? And she's like, when guys try to trip you up with the most obscure NFL trivia that even they don't know, nor could they know, just to prove that they know more than you, and it's ridiculous. So I came across, I don't remember if it was your Instagram, but when I came across you, Fangirl Sports Network, I knew we had to have you on the show.
Thank you.
We're excited to have you. You ready to talk some NFC West?
Let's do it. It should be a very interesting division. The division that last year was supposed to be the best and turned out to not be the case, but I think this year probably will be at the top.
Well, this is well-timed. We actually did a show last week where we ranked the divisions, and it was unanimous far and away that the NFC West was the top division, really the only division where it is theoretically possible and not out of the blue that all 4 teams could make the playoffs, which speaks to the strength of the division. So, yes, if you're listening, obviously you have pieced together that today's division preview is the NFC West. We will talk about our takeaways of the preseason, but we're going to do that after the division breakdown. Tracy is being extremely generous with her time, and she has a heart out, and we want to get as much of that 49ers knowledge as we can get. So let's start with our NFC West division preview. So as always, today's episode is presented by Legit Football. Legit Football, the top 5 NFL stories of the day, delivered direct to your inbox every morning for free. Just go to legitfootball.com to subscribe or look for a link in the episode description. So once again, as we have done, this is division preview number 5. So we have, 6. We got 2 more after this. We're going to go through the teams in the order of the 2020 standings. So we'll start with the Seahawks, go Rams, Cardinals, and finish up with Tracy's 49ers. We'll talk about major losses, major additions, any coaching changes, key draft picks, and we'll give the Vegas current line for wins, and then what we think of each team, break it down, and then each give our predictions for the division. So let's go ahead and jump right into last year's perhaps most polarizing team from first half of the season to the second half of the season. Winner of the NFC West in 2020, Seattle Seahawks. Key players re-signed, running back Chris Carlson, wide receiver Tyler Lockett, and D-line Poona Ford. They brought in tight end Gerald Everett, former Ram, Gabe Jackson from the Raiders, and cornerback Ahkello Witherspoon, formerly of the 49ers, as well as defensive end Kerry Hyder, also from San Fran. Key departures, David Moore, wide receiver. Shaq Griffin, now in Jacksonville. Defensive tackle Jerron Reed, who went to Kansas City. And cornerback Quentin Dunbar, who was just recently released by the Lions, currently unemployed. Wide receiver Dwayne Eskridge, cornerback Trey Brown, and offensive tackle Stone Forsythe, some of their top draft picks. One major coaching change, offensive coordinator Shane Waldron of that McVay coaching tree. Anybody that's gotten a coffee from McShay has a coaching job in his future at some point, but he has been with McShay for many years. He replaces Brian Schottenheimer, and the total win prediction is 10 wins. So, Will, I'm going to start with you on this. What's your outlook on Seattle for 2021?
I mean, more of the same than it always has ever been, right? They're going to do moderately well. They're going to have some holes, and they're going to go relatively deep into the year, but not much farther than that. I mean, I'm not particularly excited for Seattle. All the rumors of Wilson coming, going, staying, whatever, and then the whole just the revamped defensive situation and all that kind of stuff. I'm just not. I just really don't like how Pete Carroll runs that offense and that team, and so I think it's gonna be more of the same for Seattle. Really.
Do you think that it's going to end up with Russell Wilson wanting to actually leave next year? Do you have any idea where it's going to go?
I don't know, man. I mean, Russell's one of those guys. I mean, kind of see him in Seattle for the long haul. Like, sure, I mean, who knows? Who knows what happens with Aaron Rodgers and all of what he had. You can see that people being where they were and then being unhappy. I mean, what are they going to do without Russell Wilson? Right. Yeah. So, I mean, they're gonna keep him there. I think he probably wants to hang out at least for a while. It's just confusing. Like, if I was Russell Wilson, I would definitely be frustrated. Gets on a roll, and all of a sudden they kind of like take the keys out from away from him, and then he's not cooking. He's more sous chefing. So it's but I don't have any huge feelings one way or the other about the Seahawks.
Tracy, obviously we know that you are in very deep with the 49ers, but you have to have some familiarity with the rest of the division. What are your thoughts on Seattle's situation going into 2021?
Well, I think what you brought up, that the new offensive coordinator is probably the most interesting thing to watch, because will they let Russ cook, or, as you said, sous chef? But I think that is going to be the most interesting thing to watch. The defense really hasn't, although there have been changes, it hasn't really changed. It has not massively improved much. I don't know that the offensive line has really improved much. This team continues to do moderately well and get it into the playoffs because of Russell Wilson. I mean, he is the Seattle Seahawks. And the frustrating thing for 49ers fans or anybody who's playing the Seattle Seahawks is they're never out of the game because of Russell Wilson. So what happens with this new offensive coordinator? Is he really given the reins? Is Pete Carroll really let him do his thing, and he and Russell Wilson figure out a way to make this offense even more dynamic? That's what all remains to be seen. I, in a lot of ways, think there's a chance the Seahawks are the least of the issue in the NFC West this particular season. But again, I think this new offensive coordinator is, of all the additions and subtractions, he is pretty much the biggest, most important piece that they have added this year and are dealing with.
They're sort of pot committed to Jamal Adams, right? I think last I saw that they're going to franchise tag him. They spent the two picks on him, so I mean they're going to have to pay him a boatload of money.
They literally had essentially no pass rush until he came back from injury, and they started blitzing him off the safety position. That their safety is their number one pass rusher.
He's the defense.
And
so he's like the Russell Wilson of the defense. Like, it's Russell Wilson on offense, it's Jamal Adams on defense, and beyond that, taking nothing away from DK Metcalf, who's an incredibly talented wide receiver. So there obviously are other pieces, and there are other pieces that are good and make a tremendous difference. But I think those are your two key players. But as incredible as Jamal Adams is, he's one man on defense. So, like you said, when he was out with injury, it was night and day, and that defense is not particularly strong other than that to begin with. So I just think that's kind of the thing. But the thing with the Seahawks, and I said it before, is they'll always contend because of Russell Wilson. So are they going to hit 10 wins? I don't know. We'll see. I think it's going to depend how the rest of the division actually shapes out, but they will probably do well, and they'll have a chance at getting into the playoffs because of Russ.
Yeah, my biggest question on the defensive side of the ball is in the secondary, because as good as Jamal Adams was rushing the passer, he actually didn't have great coverage stats last year.
No, he did not.
They lost their number one corner in Shaquem Griffin, who is in Jacksonville now, or Shaquille, twins, similar. And they didn't have a very good pass defense to begin with until they got a pass rush going. So that's definitely a weakness, is the secondary. But as far as intrigue, 100% agree, Tracy. What does Shane Waldron bring? This is his first time being an offensive coordinator. He's been with McVay since Washington. He was a quarterbacks coach with the football team, formerly known as the Redskins, and then he's been with him in LA since then. Does he bring any of that McVay offense, any of those elements to this offense? They made it seem like they didn't want to make too many changes. Russell apparently signed off on bringing Waldron in, so maybe he's excited. Maybe that opens up the pass game, maybe some more play action. When you've got Russell Wilson and you got Pete Carroll as a head coach, as you said, Tracy, I mean, they're going to be competitive. Just nobody's predicting they're going to be at the bottom of the division short of injury. But yes, of the other teams that we will get to, I am not as high on as on the Seahawks as I am some of the other teams. I absolutely think they'll make the playoffs. They're Seattle, they will. But the way this team kind of fell apart at the end of last year, curious to see if that goes into 2021. So let's move on to the next team. In L.A., we've got the Los Angeles Rams, who our producer Anthony is a closet fan of, because as a diehard Lions fan, now that Stafford is in L.A. and Anthony lives in L.A., we all know, and our listeners know, I did that just to get the Lions sound drop out of Anthony. Good job, Anthony. Way to be on top of it. All right, key players re-signed for the Rams. Edge Leonard Floyd. Left tackle Andrew Whitworth, who is 40, by the way, and still playing at a relatively high level. Good for you. And cornerback Darius Williams, who had a great season last year opposite Jalen Ramsey. Key addition, and this is honestly the addition, and that's quarterback Matthew Stafford in that trade from Detroit, and wide receiver Deshaun Jackson for the 2 to 3 games they'll get out of him. That'll be exciting. Key departures, quarterback Jared Goff, now in Detroit. Big losses in the secondary, with safety John Johnson and cornerback Troy Hill both going to Cleveland. Michael Brockers and Morgan Fox, who were rotational next to Aaron Donald, are now out. Wide receiver Josh Reynolds now in Tennessee. And running back Malcolm Brown in Miami. Key 2021 draft picks, wide receiver Tutu Atwell, linebacker Ernest Jones, and defensive tackle Bobby Brown III. Big coaching change here is former defensive coordinator Brandon Staley is now the head coach of the Chargers, and defensive coordinator Raheem Morris, who was recently in Atlanta, is now the defensive coordinator. Vegas has the total win total at 10.5 wins. Tracy, I'll start with you on this one. Thoughts on LA 2021?
Well, I think it's a big pressure situation, in my humble opinion, this year for both Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford. And obviously that sounds a little Captain Obvious. But here's the thing. Matthew Stafford, his entire career, has been, he's so good, but he plays for the Lions. No offense to your producer, but he plays for the Lions, and he doesn't have
He's used to it. We trash the Lions all the time.
But he doesn't have this. He doesn't have that. Sean McVay, offensive genius, an amazing first year. Things went downhill with Jared Goff. Well, Jared Goff wasn't really his guy. He didn't make that trade for Jared Goff. If he has his guy, everything changes. So for both of them, it's either going to be incredible or they're going to fall on their face. I think Sean McVay is an offensive genius. I think he's an incredible coach. But now he has his guy, and his guy is surrounded by what he was lacking in Detroit. Will it succeed? Defensively, even with those changes, they do have Jalen Ramsey. They do have Aaron Donald. I mean, Aaron Donald is he's Aaron Donald. I don't really know that he needs any more of a description than that. But this whole thing is, I'm just very curious to see. It's a lot of pressure. They're used to it. They'll be fine on the pressure situation. But is Matthew Stafford, he's a great quarterback, but is he this elite quarterback who's just been missing everything his entire career? I'm not convinced. Yeah, I'm not convinced. I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. There were those 1 or 2 times, and so it could be the third time I'm wrong. But I've been wrong before, and I'm curious to see, and I think the same with McVay. He came in that first year, was incredible, and he was the quarterback whisperer, and he kind of really got Jared Goff going in a way that Jeff Fisher could not. And then after the Super Bowl, the Super Bowl was not obviously a very good performance, and then after that, things consistently went downhill, and the relationship deteriorated, and we could see that the end of last season. We could see it in the playoffs, where he didn't start, but then he came in. And so you had clearly a healthy Goff, and it was a choice not to start him. I believe that was, I don't think that was the end of the season. I think that was week 1 of the playoffs, if memory serves. It's all a little bit of a blur. But yeah, to me, that's just going to be fascinating. Now that they both have everything they ever wanted, will it work?
Yeah, the pressure thing is interesting. I like that you brought that up, because everybody and McVay is a great offensive coach, but their team building philosophy with GM Les Snead has basically been, they haven't had a first round draft pick in, 5 years, and they don't have any for the next few years because of the Stafford trade. They've gone all in. They got their quarterback. If Goff really was the issue according to McVay, then there are not going to be any more excuses after that season. Do you think McVay's job could be in jeopardy if they completely miss the playoffs?
Yes. I don't think he'll be fired, but I think next year
the seat gets hot.
The seat is hot. I don't think he's going to get fired after this year. Because the other thing, too, in the hiring of coaches is there's that idea of who are you going to get that's better. So I don't think that if they don't make the playoffs, I don't think that it's we're got to get rid of McVay because so-and-so is proven to be so much better. I think you still give him a little more, you give him a little more time, but I do think, yes, then the seat gets hot.
Well, one thing we haven't mentioned yet is they lost Cam Akers for the season before training camp even started. Do you think how big of an impact do you think that makes, Will?
Well, as you said, their best offensive lineman is Andrew Whitworth, who's 40. Ever since that Super Bowl run that Tracy talked about, their line has been mediocre, really. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, she said the expectations are high for Stafford. Completely agree. He's never had to live under the constant pressure of greatness of Brady, Rodgers, Manning, right? So it's going to be, I think, unique for him. I think the offense is definitely going to transform without Cam Akers. I mean, for what it would be. But you say the team is sort of Super Bowl or bust. I mean,
I don't know if it's Super Bowl or bust. Playoffs.
No, I meant playoffs or bust, whatever. Short term, for sure. What I mean is that they seem to be very reliant on their studs, right? And I think that would probably give McVay a little bit of a pass, right? So, assuming something happens, God forbid, to Aaron Donald, football gods, please be merciful and don't let that happen. I mean, or Jalen Ramsey, or Whitworth, or Stafford. One key piece in that Rams team is really vulnerable. So, remains to be seen. I mean, they're certainly a very interesting team. The other piece, to the defense is the whole Raheem Morris thing. They talked about sticking with Staley's scheme, which is a lot more complicated than what Morris has generally been known for.
Staley's of the Vic Fangio tree, so
yeah, and Morris is that Tampa 2 kind of style. So interesting to see how that's going to play out. When you have Aaron Donald, he's going to take up like half the offensive line by himself anyway. So we'll see. But one of the more where I said that I don't really care about the Seahawks ever. That's not true for the Rams, right? I'm very interested to watch the Rams this year and Stafford and see how that plays out.
Yeah, my biggest question, so once they made this Stafford trade, I was in with the rest of NFL Twitter saying, oh, yeah, Rams are Super Bowl contenders, Stafford dark horse MVP candidate, and that could still very well be true, but as I started to dig into the teams for this preview, they lost a lot on defense, and that doesn't include defensive coordinator Brandon Staley. Losing John Johnson and Troy Hill in that secondary, losing additional pieces. Yes, they've still got Ramsey, they've still got Aaron Donald, best DB, best defensive tackle, two of the best players in the NFL. Those alone could sustain them, but I don't think they're going to be a top 3 defense again. They could be top 12 and still go to the Super Bowl. But I had more questions and I was less certain about the Rams after I dug in. As long as they stay healthy on the offensive side of the ball, I think that's their strength. I think they could be one of the top offenses in the entire NFL. And we've seen what the Chiefs could do with a mediocre defense and a stellar offense. So that can be all you need. But I'm not as bullish. I mean, I still think the Rams are going to have a fantastic team, one of the best in the NFC, but I'm not ready to pencil them in the Super Bowl just yet. All right, let's move on to the next team, and that is the Arizona Cardinals. Another team, like the Seahawks, that started really hot, were sniffing the playoffs. They had the Hail Murray, with that crazy DeAndre Hopkins catch to beat the Bills, and then their offense just started to fall apart. Now, maybe it's because Cliff Kingsbury's scheme they finally figured out how to stop it on the pass. Pass coverage. I have been on this podcast multiple times saying I'm not a Kingsbury fan, but let's talk about some of their team changes. So they did re-sign left guard Justin Pugh, linebacker Jordan Hicks, and edge Dennis Gardeck. Key addition, defensive end J.J. Watt out of Houston, wide receiver A.J. Green out of Cincinnati, center Rodney Hudson, so a lot of older players, running back James Conner from Pittsburgh, and cornerback Malcolm Butler, most recently in Tennessee. Key departures, Kenyon Drake now in Vegas. It still happens sometimes. We're in the Bay Area, Tracy. You get it.
I get it.
It'll always be Oakland. Cornerback Patrick Peterson, who may not be as good as he used to be, but is still a very good defensive back. He's now in Minnesota. Hassan Reddick. Wide receiver Larry Fitzgerald is still not signed with anyone, so TBD. I guess it's possible he could still come back. I believe he's 39 at this point. Wide receiver Trent Sherfield, who is by all accounts lighting it up with the Niners right now, and tight end Dan Arnold, who is in Carolina. Key draft picks, linebacker Zaven Collins, wide receiver Rondale Moore, had a nice showing in his first preseason game, and cornerback Marco Wilson, who, Will, I believe you are familiar with.
Yeah. And the last I saw on Twitter, they're like, oh, the biggest surprise of camp is Marco Wilson. No, stop it.
No, apparently Wilson is playing well, and he had some pass breakups. I'm just saying. So Will went to the University of Florida. He had lots of opinions on Wilson getting drafted.
He's a shoe-in to do well this year.
He's the guy who threw the shoe at somebody and got ejected.
He's that guy. He's the shoe guy.
Yes.
Okay.
He's the shoe guy. Now, that's an association. Oh, shoe guy. Yeah. Oh, now we get it. So Arizona Cardinals, Vegas win total is 8 wins. Will, we'll start with you on this. How are you feeling? Do you think this is the year Murray finally makes that huge step? Do you think Kingsbury's genius of an offense comes to fruition, or do you think they continue to be mediocre?
Dude, here's the thing: is like I think we agree. Like between who we just talked about, McVay, and Kingsbury, I think Kingsbury's a lot closer to the hot seat than McVay. I mean, like he's got Kyler Murray, and Kyler Murray has flashed great. He's flashed okay, a lot of things. I mean, the team is there's a lot of, it's like a jambalaya, right? There's a lot of stuff there. They got the Chase Edmonds RB1, James Conner pair.
Jambalaya, that's like a Saints comparison. I don't really,
I guess.
That analogy doesn't work.
What I'm saying is that
what do they
Chase
eat in Arizona?
Edmonds, if I remember right, and I didn't look this up because that would require preparing, but when Chase Edmonds has had his RB1 opportunities, like it really hasn't gone as you would think it would go, right? So you've got him and you got Connor, and then you have basically DeAndre Hopkins and everybody else to catch the ball. Like they don't have a tight end to speak of really, and then they have this kind of carnival or clown car of like third string wide receivers. Like you have the corpse of AJ Green, you got Christian Kirk, who's flashed brilliant sometimes, but also Andy Isabella, kind of a make it or break it. And then you just have that's really it. So
they need Rondo more. They need the rookie out of Purdue to produce.
Yeah. So I mean,
quickly.
You've got that, and then it's very much on the other side of the ball, reliant on J.J. Watt staying healthy. He was still dominant even as old as he is, but now he's sort of injury prone. So I don't know. I mean, the Cardinals are I don't think I've ever actually met a Cardinals fan. Believe it or not. So I'm not sure if they exist. So I think that's one. What?
We have 2 team deep dives. We're actually going to do a deep dive for the Bucs later this evening on our bonus episode. And we have Sandy Charles, who was recommended by Tracy, who's coming on to talk for our final deep dive. She's coming on next week, I believe. So I don't know if she's a fan, but she reports on the Cardinals.
Was it a Black Swan?
Grew up a Cardinals fan. We used to have fangirls for all the teams, and we changed our model. But Sandy was our Cardinals fangirl. So
there you go. So we found one. Will we found a Cardinals fan? And she's going to come help us break down the cards.
I'm not going to be able to confirm that she's real. So until then,
but you know what I'm saying. You'll meet her, and then you'll know for sure.
Cardinals is a team that you feel like you want to be excited about, right? Like Kyler Murray is always like a fan. I mean, it's great for Murray. He's probably going to have to do what he always did, which is make it happen, because other than DeAndre, like they've got a mismatch of like preseason football essentially. So who knows if AJ Green can stay healthy? So I definitely think it's much more of a hot seat for Kingsbury than it is McVay.
Yeah, as I was digging into some of the advanced stats for this, generally running quarterbacks, their offensive lines tend to benefit that from a pass block win rate, and that because they don't have to hold their blocks very long. So generally, offensive lines, historically, for a running quarterback team, tend to have better advanced metrics. The Cardinals didn't. Even with Murray running around, they were one of the worst, bottom 10 offensive lines, and they didn't make a whole lot of improvements, short of Rodney Hudson, who, I picked him as one of my best centers in the league. But short of that, they haven't done a lot to address the offensive line. Tracy, what is your outlook on Arizona?
So a couple things. I think, first of all, in terms of hot seat, I agree with you on Kingsbury, but I think Kingsbury is like on the hot seat today. I don't think McVay gets on the hot seat unless they don't go to the playoffs. But I think Kingsbury is currently on the hot seat. That being said, I was on a panel the other night, and there was a question of who did I think was going to be the biggest issue for the 49ers in the NFC West. And I had a big hot take, and that was the Cardinals. And part of me thinks that they are the biggest problem because of all the things we just talked about, they seem like they're not. But if Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray really come into their own this season, I think that they really are. It's just going to be a matter of, can that offense start hot and stay hot, or Are they just going to start hot or not even start hot at all, and then fall flat in their face? But I actually think there is a likelihood, at least the question was, who is the biggest problem for the 49ers? So I believe that it is a hot take, but I'm saying right now that I do think it's the Cardinals because I think they're the most unknown. I think you know what you're getting with Seattle and Russell Wilson. You know all the pieces that are there for the Rams. You know Stafford, in theory, is going to be good. You know Aaron Donald is going to dominate. You know you have Jalen Ramsey back there. All of those things are true. With the Cardinals, you just don't know, and to me, that makes them the most dangerous at the moment. I could be completely wrong on this, but that is my hot take. Not that they're necessarily the biggest problem in the NFC West, but that question, everybody was like, oh my gosh, that's such a hot take. And I was like, it might be, but I'm standing by it. They'll be the biggest problem, at least for the 49ers.
Well, they clearly have the widest range of possible outcomes.
Yes.
I'm a Dolphins fan, and I think the Dolphins have the highest range of possible outcomes in the NFL because if Tua is horrible, they could win 3 games. If he's great, they could win 11. And Arizona is kind of like that for the NFC West. I think we all know the 49ers, the Seahawks, and the Rams are going to be right there competing for the division. The Cardinals could, or they could finish 5-12. Both are certainly within the realm of possibility, but that does make them dangerous, Tracy. I don't think it's as hot a take as some might say. I can see that. I'm not a believer in them in general, but I can certainly easily see a scenario where they are very competitive, where they play more like the Cardinals from the first half of last season, where they were knocking off teams, and they were in first in the NFC West for a hot second last year, before it all fell apart. So if they continue that, if they don't have that second half collapse, absolutely. Just like a lot of the teams.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think the Cardinals are the epitome of any given Sunday. So the Cardinals could end the season 5-12, but those 5 wins could come against the NFC West. That's what I think makes them kind of dangerous. So then that becomes the record and with the division record, and that's what I think is that's what I think is just kind of interesting about them. They very well could, but they could be 6-11, and they could beat I just think that's what I find interesting about the Cardinals. But I think Cliff Kingsbury is very much on the hot seat, and if they have a bad season, I think he's out.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think he's probably got one of the hottest seats in the league, not just this division, because as you mentioned, he's on the hot seat right now. He's had 3 mediocre seasons. Sure, it was an improvement over the historically bad Arizona Cardinals from before he took over and they drafted Kyler first overall. He got better, but they have not improved beyond that. They've stayed mediocre. They've kind of plateaued. If they do not make another jump this year, I could easily see them, this being Kingsbury's last year. To be determined, and if Murray is a casualty of that, I'd like to think not, but you never know. But like the other teams, as I really started to dive in, it was their defense that worried me. They did not have a good secondary last year, and they lost their top 2 cornerbacks in Patrick Peterson and Drake Kirkpatrick, and they didn't really replace it with much. So once again, especially in this division, secondary is a concern. They don't have a huge pass rush. Chandler Jones is great, but he's requested a trade. Is he still going to be there? Is he going to give it the same effort? What do we get out of J.J. Watt? Does he stay healthy? The offense is intriguing. If it clicks, they could be, easily like a top 6, top 7 offense in the NFL. But it is it's the uncertain factor, Tracy. Completely agree. We don't really know what we're going to get, which makes it fascinating, which makes it exciting. Just to see what we're talking about at the end of the season with regards to Kingsbury, Murray, and the Arizona Cardinals. So let's circle back to the Bay Area and finish up with Tracy's San Francisco 49ers. Key players re-signed. Big re-signing in left tackle Trent Williams, one of the best left tackles in the league.
Big, literally. He is a large person. Yeah.
He is a massive human being. Indeed. Edge D. Ford and fullback Kyle Juszczyk. Key additions, Edge Samson Ebukam? Ebukam. That's why we have the 49ers beat reporter on here. Thanks. Good save, Tracy. Center Alex Mack, who reunites with Shanahan after being with him with both the Falcons and the Cleveland Browns. Running back Wayne Gallman out of the Giants. And as we mentioned earlier, wide receiver Trent Sherfield. Key departures, cornerback Keller Witherspoon. Defensive line Solomon Thomas. Running back Jerick McKinnon and Tevin Coleman. Cornerback Richard Sherman, who could technically come back pending his legal issues. We shall see. Tracy, hopefully you had some insight on that. Wide receiver Kendrick Bourne, who's now in New England, and defensive end Kerry Hyder. Key 2021 draft picks, the first one obviously being the most key of all. We saw some good, we saw some bad. Quarterback Trey Lance. They also drafted offensive guard Aaron Banks and running back Trey Sermon. Coaching changes, so former defensive coordinator Robert Saleh is now the head coach of the Jets. Replaced him with former linebackers coach, now defensive coordinator DeMeco Ryans. Vegas has the win total at 10.5 for the 49ers. Tracy, you know we got to start with you on this.
No, wait, no. Why would you start with who knows what she's talking about?
Why would we start with the
me
expert?
first, so I can just talk a bunch of poop.
Don't you think
she
it's better
can
to
correct
start
me.
with me so that you can then piggyback on everything?
You can feed off that. Yeah. She says
Okay,
she says the smart stuff, and then you can feed off it and make yourself look smarter, as opposed to you just throwing up random shit and nobody. Okay, see, that's why I'm the main host, Tracy.
Yeah, but still,
I'm doing you a favor, Will. You want us? We can start with you, and you can make yourself look like an idiot, like you usually do.
No, fine.
Okay,
I can.
Tracy, hit us with some 49ers deep knowledge.
Well, where to begin? I think it's funny, of the departures that you mentioned, other than Richard Sherman, I don't know that I call any of them that key. And that is, I don't mean that unkindly towards any of the people that departed, but I think it's more a testament to who's still there and who they signed to make the team better. So I think that's kind of interesting, other than Richard Sherman, of course. So that is the one caveat there, but I think that's very interesting.
I do have one quick question on that exact note. The only other person on here who points out to me, and you might know better than me, is Solomon Thomas. I know he is not a game wrecker, but he is part of that defensive line.
You're right. Solomon Thomas is also, for sure, a key departure. I will definitely say that. And I really like Solomon Thomas and hope he does very well in Vegas. But I think that also is a key departure. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think the defense is generally going to be interesting to see. There was a lot of concern about cornerback depth, and depth in the secondary generally. I think we saw the other night in the preseason game that the rookie defensive backs are going to provide that sort of depth that they were looking for. Jaquaski Tart, safety, is out right now with turf toe. So I think,
sorry,
it's okay.
I don't even want to know what you're laughing at.
It's just a funny name.
Jaquaski Tart. Okay. Well, he's out right now, but you have.
How do you birth your newborn son and you look at him and you're like, Jaquaski Tart? It's just funny.
See, sorry, Tracy, we get off the rails. This is just
no
part of the
worries,
show.
No worries at all. So he's out right now. So there's competition there between Tavon Wilson and I think Talanoa Hufanga. Is a rookie who really, I think, was thought would be mainly special teams, could very well end up starting in that position. He's played well. He played well the other night in the preseason game. He was everywhere. He did have a PI penalty on him, but you almost love the energy. And he's a rookie in his preseason game one, and so that was pretty cool. So I think that's an area where they're not going to really have to worry. Of course, I assume you want to talk about Trey Lance, who did show.
Who's that? I don't know who that is.
This is like a bison or something like that. He is,
comes from some of the Dakotas. Yeah.
Something along those lines. He's obviously great. He's shown flashes in practice. He's had some great practices. He showed flashes the other night, but he also showed that he was a rookie, and that's not a knock on Trey, because I think the ceiling is so high for him, and that he is going to end up being like Mahomesian. He is an incredible talent, but he is a rookie. We saw Jimmy Garoppolo play well in his one series. There was an offensive PI penalty that stalled the one drive. Interesting, even practice today, Jimmy started off a little bit tough. He was intercepted by Fred Warner, and then he just was like fire, going 10 out of 10, scoring a touchdown and moved the ball. He ran. I mean, he looked great. There's been a lot of talk that he's kind of, Lance is pushing him a little bit, and you see kind of a confidence in Jimmy that is great. This team, should they be able to stay healthy, which is for this team a really big thing, because last year was just, it was like the domino effect of one after the other. You have Nick Bosa coming back, who should be ready for week 1. You mentioned Dee Ford, who has looked really good out there. He says that he's feeling well. He's been in team drills now for a while. And training camp is hard because you're playing against each other and you don't learn a ton. I think for the 49ers, we're going to learn a lot this week. They have joint practices with the Chargers, and that will be very telling, I think, in a lot of ways. But, this team, I think, has a very high ceiling as well. I think 10.5 wins is fair. I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up being 11 or 12, but it's going to be about health. And then in terms of the quarterback situation, I think this week is going to be a big one as we see kind of what happens in the joint practices, what happens in the preseason game. I do still believe that Jimmy Garoppolo starts the season as QB1, but a lot of things can happen between now and the next week. There's not that much time between now and the beginning of the season, which is crazy. A lot can happen in the next few weeks. It just feels like there probably isn't a reason to rush it with Trey, and you might be better off starting the season with Jimmy and seeing what happens. And then if you have to make a change, because my feeling is if you end up starting with Trey and for whatever reason you trade Jimmy, is it Trey Lance and his backup's Josh Rosen, or Trey Lance and his backup is Nate Sudfeld? And then are you in the same position as you were last year and 2 years ago? Jimmy gets hurt, and then, or if Trey were to get hurt, then the whole season is, that kind of thing. So, like I said, a lot can happen in the next several weeks, but that's kind of where we are with the 49ers. Did you have any other specific questions? Because I know there was a lot that I just threw at you.
Before we move to Will, I would love a prediction. You're there, you're seeing Lance, you obviously Jimmy G well, and we won't hold you to this or anything, but when do you think Shanahan will give Lance the reins and start him?
I think, honestly, it's all going to depend on where they are at the bye week. It's interesting. Their bye week is week 6. So they start the season in Detroit, in Philadelphia, home against the Packers. They play, I think, at Arizona, and then home against the Seahawks. Everything, I think, is going to be dependent on those 5 games. If they're 4-1, you don't make a change, because why would you make a change? If they're 4-1, if they're 5-0, you don't make a change. If they're 3-2, 2-3, then you make a change, I would think, after the bye week. I think that first game of the season against the Lions may be a little harder than people think it's going to be. Not because I think the Lions are so great, but if you were put a rookie quarterback on the road, in his first NFL game, I don't know, and with some excitement around that team, I don't know. So I would say, to me, at this moment in time on August 16th, if a change were to be made, it would be after the bye week, but it's going to be very dependent on their record. They could potentially be 5-0 at that point. They could be 4-1. Those great records are not out of the realm of possibility. If things go terribly wrong and they're 2-3, then that's different. Even 3-2, I think a change will probably be made.
And do you think, obviously, D'Amico Ryans has been in that scheme with Saleh. Do you think he's essentially going to keep the same scheme, having been familiar with it? Do you think there won't be much of a difference with him taking over for Saleh?
I think they've said it'll be a little bit faster, and there will be, some differences, but I think generally yes. And most of your guys are coming back. I mean, other than Solomon Thomas, most of your guys will be back there. I think a question mark on the defensive line is Javon Kinlaw, who was dealing with a knee thing. Now he hurt his shoulder last week, and now he's week to week. So this creates something on the defensive line. It creates a big question mark. If you don't have Kinlaw, who is moving in there, what does that do to the chemistry of the team, to the talent of that line? Because that could end up being a very big loss. So, remains to be seen. But if you have Dee Ford and Nick Bosa staying healthy, and Eric Armstead playing at a relatively high level, Jason Verrett stays healthy, Jimmy Ward stays healthy. I mean, it is a pretty decent defense. You have Emmanuel Mosley, presumptive starters. Will be the first time, I believe, going into his career that he's coming in as a starter. He looks great in camp. So, I think that defense will remain largely kind of what we've seen, but I know there are tinkerings. I like the word tinkering. There have been a little tinkerings over there. That works. But those are where the question marks are. And I think another question mark for the 49ers is the offensive line. We saw the reserve offensive line was kind of a disaster the other night. Luckily, that group should never have to all play together again the rest of the season. But how will they play better than they did last year? I imagine, yes. I think Mike McGlinchey has overcome a lot of the things that were plaguing him last year. So I think he's going to be playing much more at the level we were used to with him. Of course, Trent Williams. But Alex Mack at center is a massive upgrade. Big question mark is the right guard position. So Daniel Brunskill's been taking a lot of reps with the first team, but that right guard position is a bit of a question mark. No matter who wins it, will they be strong enough? So those are the question marks I would say for San Francisco.
See, Will, now she's given you a plethora of 49ers knowledge that you can just ride the coattails right into the sunset.
No, we're going to zoom way out. We're going to go from, like, that level, talking about, how Daniel Brunskill is taking snaps at right guard, and to the casual NFL fan level.
The new uniform.
For a little bit.
They look the throwbacks. They're awesome.
Hey, listen. I'm not that bad.
They do.
I'm not that bad. Listen.
We have an NFL podcast. I hope you're better than uniforms there, Will.
Well, those throwbacks do look really good. I mean, I'm just saying.
They do look awesome.
We could talk about it for a while.
You know what's interesting is we had somebody on here, high level, former NFL exec, that mentioned that Shanahan was not as revered maybe in the NFL coaching circles as you would think. Right, so like you always have your anointed gurus, right? You got your McVay and all those people that have like the legacy and the history and all that kind of stuff. Do you think there's any like? I mean, I like Kyle Shanahan. I think he's his stature, his mystique is kind of warranted. I mean, I feel like he has done a lot. I really think that he's somebody that should and could pluck another Super Bowl here really soon. I don't know. Do you think why would you think that would be a thing? Do you think there's any credibility to that from what you? I mean, I know you probably can't you're not going to come in here and crap all over him. It's like your team.
Definitely not. And I really like him. To be honest with you, I have not heard that ever. So I don't. Granted, I'm not in the coaching.
It was on our podcast, Brian. Don't shake your head.
I think that was one of the ones that didn't get recorded when we were just talking with him.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
I don't know, and that's a different world than what I'm in. You know what I mean? Like, I'm in the media world. I'm not in the, front office coaching community world. But I still have never heard that. So I can't really speak to that. I mean, all I can speak to is I've covered Kyle now since 2017, and I do think very highly of Kyle. I think he really is a great coach. He's a pleasure to cover. He's pretty honest and transparent, as much as he can be, which I would say he and John Lynch
except with the whole Mac Jones Trey Lance situation.
Well, but I would say with Kyle, he was. I mean, first of all, I would never have expected him to come out and be like, "We're just going to take Trey Lance." I think he handled that, but I think a lot of that was just built up, and he, we had that press conference on Monday, and he didn't really say. He kind of played into it, but he didn't really say anything one way or the other. But in that kind of case, I wouldn't expect him to. But I would say if you ask him a question, he was never going to be like, yes, this is who we're going to draft. But you ask him a question, he's honest about it. You ask him an injury question, whatever it is, he's pretty honest and transparent. So I have nothing but good things to say about Kyle.
Yeah, no. And it wasn't crapping on him. It was just like,
no, I know.
You know how some people can get a little memey? You know what I mean? Like their mystique kind of. Yeah, that's fair.
I have not found him to be that way at all.
I will say that when you look at the team that they've crafted over the past years, right? Like, it is shaping up to be a really exciting, dynamic, fun team, right? Like, if we can all agree that Jimmy Garoppolo is a dead man walking in that offense at some point. And then we get somebody who's fun like Trey Lance. And I'm not. I like Jimmy. He came from where I was a fan of for a long time.
Will's a fair weather fan. He follows Brady everywhere.
But obviously Trey Lance is more exciting, right? I don't think anybody's going to argue that. He's newer. Yeah. Like Jimmy Garoppolo is kind of a known entity in the NFL by now.
That 80-yard touchdown in the preseason game is all you need to know about what he can do.
I think the 80-yard touchdown absolutely shows what he can do and shows an excitement level. It doesn't necessarily show that he's ready to start week one.
No,
I also
agree.
And I say that with, if Kyle Shanahan says he's ready to start week one, he's ready to start week one. He knows way more about this than I do. I feel if Kyle Shanahan thinks Jimmy Garoppolo is who he should start, Kyle Shanahan wants to win every game too. And there's a lot of conversation on Twitter and among the fans and all of that. One thing I'll say about Jimmy, and I say this a lot, what I don't get, and you're not doing this at all, but there's the thing with the fans is this like vitriol against him. And I could understand wanting something different. You guys, it's not you guys, it's just something we see a lot. You know, wanting something different, being concerned about injuries, but there is this like vitriol to him that towards him that I just don't understand. I mean, he's gotten hurt twice, but in the one healthy season, they did go to the Super Bowl, you know, and he won some pretty key games. There was the Seattle game, there was the New Orleans game, for all the talk that he can't do, you know, when he needs to do it, he can do it. So I do find that, you know, very interesting. But I think Trey is incredibly exciting, and he, like I said earlier, his ceiling is high. I mean, like I said, I think he has the potential to be Mahomesian. I just don't know that he's going to be Mahomesian week 1 of the 2021 season, and he may not be Mahomesian week 17 of the 2021 season. Kyle Shanahan has said he's going to play this year, even if it's just situationally. So I think again, this could all change so much the next couple weeks, but on this day, August 16th, I think they ride with Jimmy until there's a point where they think they can't. But if they're winning, they're not going to make a change just for the sake of making a change.
Well, and in fairness, Mahomes wasn't Mahomes until year 2. I mean,
no,
he played
he
one
had
game
Alex
in the
Smith.
last game of the season.
It's a different situation, but it's not. You know, there are similarities.
There's similarities.
Alex Smith.
Yeah.
There's similarities to the Tom Brady, Jimmy Garoppolo situation. So,
I think if your bar is Mahomes or bust, that's a really unfair and bad bar for a quarterback.
I don't think that. I'm not saying that's his bar.
No, I'm not saying it is.
He has that potential.
But that's every casual fan's bar, right? Is like, we want the next, you know, and Buffalo thinks they've got it.
I've seen it with Tua.
I've seen it with Tua.
The guy played 9 games, and they want his head because he wasn't.
No. I don't mean that, but I
season.
mean, like, you know, you want that, right? You want the GOAT in there, and I like to the other points I was going to make. When you look at the other people that Kyle has surrounded the quarterback position with, I think the world of Raheem Mostert. I think he's super underrated as a running back in the league. You look at Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel. You know, they got Sanu for nothing.
We haven't talked about Sherfield yet, which we have to do.
Kittle.
I teased that he left Arizona. Yeah. Well,
shout out to Kyle Juszczyk holding down. Okay. No, I was saying shout out to Kyle Juszczyk, who's like holding down the OG fullback position, the last stalwart in the NFL to do that.
He doesn't really play an OG fullback position though. He's labeled a fullback, but he's like
it should just be called Kyle Juszczyk. Like his position, it's not.
Yes, right.
It's just him.
It's one of a kind.
He's the KJ.
But you brought up Brandon Ayuk, who I think is going to be a superstar.
Especially with
absolute superstar.
Yeah. I think Ayuk, though, is more fitted to like a Trey Lance's kind of skill set. I mean, personally, he'll do well with anybody, but I think he's great. So I guess the moral of the story, what I'm saying is that Kyle has crafted an amazingly fun offense for the future, for the long haul, right? I mean, all those guys are super young. They're all super fast. They play fast football. And Kyle is like one of those people that like his run schemes are amazing. He'll use all 3 running backs, and they're going to hit you from 75 different angles, and you're just going to go down the field all day long. So I'm not saying that because like you're on the show. I'm actually a really big fan of his offenses, and it's really frustrating to play fantasy with.
In fairness, Will doesn't pander to anyone, so he's being truthful.
I believe that.
It's really hard to try to fantasy out the 49ers because I mean. Ayuk's going to get his, but like, and Kittle, of course, but I mean, the running backs, like, flip a coin, right? Like, you'll get the random Jeff Wilson, 2 TD vultures.
Too. I mean, they have like a plethora of running backs. Jeff Wilson's hurt right now, but you've got Raheem Mostert, who's just, I mean, you can't say enough good things about Raheem Mostert, the player and the person. Like, you really just cannot. But then you have all these rookie running backs. Elijah Mitchell is dealing with an injury right now, but he won't be out long. Be interesting to see what happens with Trey Sermon. Kyle said after the game the other night he'd like to see more from him, so that's going to be kind of an interesting one to see. But you mentioned Mohamed Sanu. We did not talk about Trent Sherfield, who at this moment in time is who I think is going to be wide receiver 3. But you know, Mohamed Sanu also does look great. He's like a different person than who was on the team last year, so it is exciting. And they don't like to compare to 2019, but there's a similarity in terms of what you're talking about, and this is a fun team. There's the potential for a lot of fun here. So we'll see. And a healthy Nick Bosa, kind of when we were going way back to the beginning, we were talking about the Seahawks. A healthy Nick Bosa is a little bit like there's the exciting player on the defense, and he's a game changer. I mean, he's a literal game changer. So it's going to be fun to watch this team. Should they stay healthy, and I say that as someone who has covered the 49ers for years where health is an issue, should they stay healthy, I all bias out of it, I do think they are the best team in the NFC West.
You know what's weird about...
Before you say what's weird, Tracy has limited time. I would love to get some predictions for... Okay, all right.
Will can say what's weird.
What I was going to say is, what's weird about the NFL? If you look at like the Bosas and the Mannings, right? It's like genetics are weird because there's something about like the Watts.
Yeah, just look at your hairline
or the Gronkowski. Listen, I'm growing my hair in. Like, look, this is hot.
I see that. It looks worse.
It looks worse. Your mouth.
It looks like you put like a
calm down.
Hair for men or whatever on the
hair for men. That's what it is because I'm a dude and that's my hair. Listen. So what I'm saying is like these people that like these families, like the Gronkowskis, right? Like it's crazy to me that like if you looked at Archie Manning, I don't know if he's still like viable, like in his old age, but if he went out and made a new kid, you'd be like, that's a quarterback. I guarantee it. It's just crazy that like the Bosas and all that kind of stuff.
They've got Arch. They have their nephew is the next great thing.
The way the genetics work, but
he's like
any single Bosa.
You have genetics, and you also have families who know what it takes, so genetics, and from the time those kids, or I think, listen, Joey and Nick Bosa have God-given incredible talent, and you can't train that. But knowing that and knowing what it takes to make it the NFL, you make sure that they, have, and I think it's fantastic, have what they need to succeed, and it certainly worked because they are both really good. Putting it very mildly.
I have a 5-year-old daughter, and often I think about what her life is going to look like. And my wife asked me, what do you think? And I'm like, listen, I don't care who she ends up loving. Could be black, white, male, female, whatever. Doesn't matter to me. Whoever it is, they need to go in the first round. That's all. That's all that's kind of a low bar. That's all I need. Just go in the first round. It doesn't even matter what draft it is.
Maybe she goes in the first round.
That's what I would say. Maybe. She could be an incredible athlete in her own right. She doesn't have to.
That's right. U.S. women's soccer team. Or just don't go to the WNBA because they don't make a lot of money. Anything else?
She's 5 years old. I would hope by the time she could be in the WNBA, those women are making the same amount of money as men because they.
I would hope so too.
That's right.
I agree.
That would be my feeling.
So let's wrap it up. Let's talk about some predictions. Because if I let Will, he'll just talk for like the next hour about random stuff and his hairline and whatever and genetics. Okay, Tracy.
Hairline.
Yes. It's weird. It's like a mop. Anyway, let's talk about predictions. Order of standings for the NFC West for 2021.
I think.
Putting you on the spot.
I'm not going to hot take as much here, but I'm going to say San Francisco, LA, Arizona, Seattle.
Oh, that is a little bit of a hot take. Seattle.
It is a little. Well, okay. You know what? I've now this Arizona thing. I've like gone with it. So that's what.
Yeah, you might as well. You made the take.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think if you're going to look at the division, it's a really hard division to call, right? All those teams are good, really, for the most part. Probably going to go with the Cardinals underperforming. I'm going to take the Seahawks coming in third, and then I'm going to go Rams, Niners. So I do not that again. It's not for the guest. I just think it's going to shake out that way.
Cardinals
he went bottom to top.
Bottom to top. Okay.
I thought you
put the Niners
off. I was like,
you would have been very confused. You'd have been very confused if it was the other way around.
But that would be quite the hot take. So I would respect
that. That would be the hot take. You should have stuck with it. Yeah, Cardinals on the top, Niners on the bottom. All right, I'm going to go with it, and it's nitpicking here. I'm going to go with LA winning the division, but I think it comes down to Week 18 and, separated by a single game. I do think the Niners are the team that finishes right behind them. Could very easily see that being flip-flop. Once again, as Tracy mentioned, health depends on that. And it might seem like it's different year to year, but for some reason it just seems like the Niners always get bit by the injury bug. with Seattle finishing third and also in the playoffs. So the top three I've got in the playoffs in the NFC West. And I think Arizona misses, and I think Kingsbury, this is his last hurrah. That's my prediction for the NFC West. All right, I don't know how much time you have, Tracy. We're going to go on and talk about some preseason stuff. If you have to go, that's fine. If you want to stay, we'd love to have you talk about some rookie quarterbacks.
I do have to go in the next couple of minutes. So I don't know what's the easy way for me to whatever's easiest for you guys.
Just whenever you're ready, say bye. We will just keep on talking and
all right, then I will say thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun, letting me get in my Cardinals hot takes. I really appreciate that. I'll be excited to talk during the season and see where all these people end up, where all these teams end up. It'll be fun.
Tracy, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Make
sure to check her. Yeah, super excited. We will definitely have you back on again. Check out Fangirl Sports Network and look out for Tracy's work reporting for the San Francisco 49ers. Good luck. Hopefully no injury bugs this year. Thank you, Tracy.
You can find all my 49ers content at fgsn.com and on Twitter at 49ers Fangirl and on Instagram at Tracy Sandler. So there you go.
Perfect. Thanks a lot.
All right. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right. Let's keep on rolling, and let's talk about a little bit of preseason overreaction. What's your first instinct? Which games did you watch? I don't think either of us watched any full games, but what highlights did you see? Anything come to mind? Week 1 overreaction.
Yeah. So like the preseason is just like your opportunity to I think the big thing for everybody in the preseason is scratching their draft pick itch, right? Like that was our pick. Like I want to see him. Like bring him in, right? And so. And the starters, you want to see what the new coordinators, what the new offenses look like and all that kind of stuff. And that lasts a series, maybe, or not. So, definitely the preseason for me is it's front-loaded, though. It's front-loaded and back-loaded. Either you have to watch the very start of the game or you're watching, like, the fourth quarter with 2 minutes left when you're like, come on, Kyle Trask.
On the line. Yeah.
Come on, buddy. See you. You get in the very end of the game. So, man, I think I am going to talk about the people that, we're probably going to orient around, which are the QBs. Largely, that's kind of what you see, right? And then, because most of this is just the teams getting in their reps and giving getting their roster cuts in place and that kind of stuff. We can talk about, how Tim Tebow is going to make the Hall of Fame with his debut. But
no, can we talk about that? You mentioned that on Twitter. I was actually planning on bringing it up anyway. One of his, I can't even call it a block. It was an attempt at a block. Came up completely just like you and I could have made a better run block, I think, than Tebow did, and went viral. And then it came out later that he had a second. He only tried to run block twice, and both of them were complete and utter disasters. Is this it? I mean, is this the end of it? Is he going to be one of the first cuts?
Who knows, man? I mean, like, I have not heard rave reviews about his camp performance, but they don't have much at tight end either, so who knows? I mean, didn't look great. You can't see, like, here's the thing, is, like, you ever thought about if you'd be a good actor or not?
Yeah.
Like, in movies.
I'd be curious, like, ooh, could I do that? I don't know. Memorize scripts and whatnot.
Here's the thing. So, like, in various situations in my life, I've been asked to, like, role play, right? Like a sales situation, you're in real estate, probably the same thing, right? You want to role play these sales conversations.
Right.
And I always laugh because it's stupid to me to role play, right? And I think, like, if I was in a movie, I'm going somewhere with this, by the way. If I was in a movie and I had to act a role, right? Like, could I really 100% give myself to that performance? Or would I just laugh at the ridiculousness of the whole thing? And I would definitely laugh, right? So
I guess it depends on the type of movie you're in. If it's like a green screen MCU thing, no.
Nope.
Okay.
I'd laugh. And so I feel like with Tebow, right, like, you can't just kind of sort of block in the NFL, right? Like, you can't just go like, and like try to block, right? Like, you gotta either whole hog it and give up your body or don't, right? And I feel like he just
did neither.
He just like the block, and it just wasn't a good showing, man. Like, you can't do that, right? So I feel like he's either going to have to not like be protective of himself. I don't know what that is. I don't know if that's nerves. I don't know if he just doesn't know how to block. That's probably it, right?
Yeah. I mean, the guy's never played tight end his entire football career.
But like, use your hands, bro. Like, use use your meat. Like, he just
you're
kind
like
of
265. Like,
just
you have some girth behind you.
Threw a shoulder into him and like just fell on the ground. So I don't know. I realized that was a real long analogy, but it was a really good one because I feel like that's when you watch him. That's kind of what you see. And the play that went viral, the next play is actually the worst one.
It's worse, yeah.
So I don't know, man. We'll see, but that's what you watch the preseason for, right? I mean, a lot of the players look really good. I mean, I know it's not in the notes talking about. I guess I'll just wrap up and talk about Kyle Trask. Bruce Arians really liked what he saw from him. I think Kyle Trask did really well, and I know this like nobody cares about Kyle Trask, but so.
He might eventually if Brady has to retire at some point.
He's going to get a lot of time to develop, and he also didn't get any help from those clown car fourth-string wide receivers that he was throwing to. So a lot of the balls look really good. I'm excited for him. So now
and we have our flavor of the week. We're doing a Bucs deep dive with a Bucs beat reporter, so we'll be able to go even deeper on Kyle Trask if that floats your fancy. Let's talk a little bit about the rookies, the quarterbacks specifically, and then we could talk about some of the non-quarterback rookies. I mean, that's whatever, but more than anything, I think the preseason is number one, to see your favorite team and see if there's a little something that gets you excited. You haven't seen them for months. This is the time for hope. All the teams start off 0-0. But the other side of it, just the NFL fan, they want to see how these rookies do. So we got Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Mac Jones. We talked a little bit about Lance with Tracy. Being a 49ers beat reporter, he had that fantastic 80-yard touchdown to Trent Sherfield, but then he had a couple of almost picks. He fumbled the ball, didn't look as good for the rest of the way. Any of the quarterbacks stand out positively or negatively for you?
Yeah. Yeah. I think Cam Newton's days are very, very shortly numbered in New England. I mean, here's the thing, right? Is like, Mac Jones didn't light the world on fire. He didn't have a Trey Lance-ish highlight. But dude looked like he's been there before, right? Yeah. He was poised. I mean,
comfortable.
That's what I'm saying. And Cam he's so very impressed. I think the world was impressed with Mac Jones's debut, right? And then like everybody else, I mean, I think the other quarterbacks, you can go through more of them in depth, but they just looked as you would think they would look, right? In their first preseason game, getting very few looks. I think it's really hard to evaluate players playing with and against like B squad and C squad, D squad help, right? Like,
right.
So I did see one funny quote from I forget who it was a Bengals rookie running back, who came in and they're like, what was the one thing that surprised you about the game? He's like, the Bucs D-line are just large humans. He goes, have you ever seen Jason Pierre-Paul? Good God. Or I think that's what he was talking about. I don't remember exactly, but it was just funny to like hear these people. And then you got what Fields saying the game's not that fast to him. So
I don't even have Fields in here. Maybe because that was the game I watched, obviously, and the most because it was the Dolphins versus the Bears. Fields started off really badly. That whole Bears offense was bad. Now, part of that, I thought the starting Dolphins defense looked fantastic. But he, give it to him. He pulled it together, made some plays with his legs. His first touchdown was a running touchdown. Ended up making some nice throws. But I think all these rookies, you're 100% right. Short of Jones. Now, Jones didn't really make any mistakes. Looked efficient, looked comfortable, but he also didn't make any big-time throws. There was one great throw in the end zone that was dropped that should have been a touchdown. But he was not stretching the field. It was efficient. He was doing what was asked of him. I think Bill and Josh McDaniels kept him on a short leash. Like, it was very scripted passes. It was short. It was quick. He was getting the ball out quick. It was accurate. I mean, so you can't fault him. He was doing what was asked of him, but he didn't flash anything. Like, that Lance touchdown was incredible.
I think that's overblown, though.
Yeah.
I mean, like, that guy had a lot of separation. Yeah, he didn't overthrow him or underthrow him. I mean, the ball was where it was supposed to be, but, like...
And Shanahan's calling the plays. I mean, he's so good at scheming wide receivers open.
You got a play. Like, I think she was right to say, like, Let's take that away. Like,
Don't
that's
anoint
fun,
him.
right?
Yeah.
You're the number 2 overall, whatever, pick. Let's be excited, but at the same time, like, I'm not going crazy over one preseason touchdown.
You know who one rookie just generally that impressed me? Patrick Surtain.
I would hope, dude. I know. I would hope.
Pick 6 in the second quarter, and I knocked another ball down. His PFF grade was in the 90s. He's the only rookie at any position who had a PFF grade in the 90s from his first game.
I would hope,
It's
dude.
preseason, don't get me, but he just looked like he was ready to play. You talked earlier about bloodlines and the Bosas and the Mannings. Surtain, his father played at a Pro Bowl level in the NFL for many years, and it's just, and Tracy mentioned this, it's not just that they have the physical skills, it's that they've been mentally prepared and told from a young age to be ready for how the NFL, to how to play in the NFL, and it shows.
Yeah, I mean, I would hope, dude. Like, I would hope he's everything that they thought he was going to be at that.
Yeah, for passing on fields.
Where he got selected. Yeah, I mean,
Drew Lock looked good. So did Bridgewater. I mean, in preseason, there's your overreaction. The Broncos looked really good. TBD, Lock could still lock, as you would say. But if we're doing overreaction, yeah, I got to say that the Broncos looked really good in their first game.
Chase Young looks disgusting, like he always has. I mean, good lord,
that was nasty. That sack.
Fitzy hit McLaurin on a nice ball. Yeah, I just want to see more of that. Like, I want to see football, dude. I don't want to see like a glorified.
That's what I mean.
Practice.
Like the shine is already wearing off. We got excited. Now we're like, okay, forget week 2 and week 3 of the preseason. Let's just get to the regular season. On that note, let's wrap up our main episode. We are going to be recording Flavor of the Week soon. We have a Bucs beat reporter coming on and podcaster to break down the Bucs. So stick around for that. We have actual details on our DFS league. So we've actually had a number of people who have reached out. We've got somewhere between 12 and 15 people who are part of the league now. So here's how it's going to work. We're going to have one weekly DFS league. Weekly meaning it's just you can choose to enter each week. You can choose not to. There'll be prizes every week. Prizes that will include one of Will's silly hats. Hopefully we have 18 of them. If not, you'll have to order some more. As well as cash prizes. We're going to do $35 for first, $15 for second, and $5 for third. So you can enter for free, play DFS. It'll be against us. It'll be me, Will, Tommy, and Anthony will all be putting our DFS lineups. You'll get to hear our hires and flyers. We're bringing that segment back. For the few of you who've been listening to since the beginning, we have our DFS hires and flyers, our great value picks. You can play in daily fantasy weekly against us, and free to enter, and you can win cash prizes as well as a silly hat. And then we're going to have a season-long DFS league as well, where we'll have weekly winners, but as well as at the end of the year, the top 3 will get paid. It's a $25 entry fee. If you're interested in that or the free league, just shoot us an email, pigskinpartypodcast@gmail.com. You can also reach out on social media. As always, we're at official PP Pod on Twitter, so you can send us a DM there. Show us your interest. Will, it ended up, it's just me and you, no Tommy. Anthony, our producer, dropped off at one point. Tracy gave us a generous amount of time, but now she dropped off. It's almost like the old days, you and I starting this podcast. As we wrap up, how you feeling?
I'm feeling ready to talk some Bucs and get into it a little more on this lovely Monday evening.
Well, there you go. So, yeah, check us out everywhere on social media. Leave us those 5-star reviews. Keep telling your friends. Don't forget to sign up for Legit Football, legitfootball.com, or look for the link in the episode description. And as Will said, we're excited to talk some Bucs. We got 2 more teams to do our deep dives. The Bucs are next, so make sure you stick around for the flavor of the week.
Go Birds!
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Pigskin Party Podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. We really appreciate that effort. We'll catch you in the next Pigskin Party.